Posted by you/perfect__nightmare. Someone broke into our home. It was every family's nightmare. My wife and I had the day off work, and we had taken our son out for lunch and some family bonding time. But as we approached our home, something felt off. I had a growing sense of dread the closer we got. As our house came into view, I could see that the front door was wide open. Someone had broken into our home. I told my family to wait outside, in case the intruder was still inside. They obliged, and I slowly and silently made my way through our house. As I stepped into the living room, I saw broken furniture, nothing in its correct place, just utter chaos. Was this person looking for something? Did they have malicious intent? Why our home? Why us? Next, I walked to our kitchen. The fridge had been emptied. Dishes and food were thrown all over the room. What kind of person had broken into our home? A homeless person who just needed food? If so, why had they destroyed the living room? That's when I heard it. Footsteps in the bedroom. The intruder was still in our house. I took a brief moment to be grateful that I had asked my wife and son to wait outside. It was impossible to decipher this person's motives so far. But I was about to come face to face with the person that forcefully entered our home. And I would demand answers. I crept toward the bedroom slowly. I approached the door, and focused on the sliver of light slipping through the crack. I could see faint shadows dancing in the light. I raised my hand, placed it against the door, and took a deep breath, readying myself for whatever may be on the other side. I pushed the door open and stepped through the threshold with authority. I couldn't believe my eyes. I actually rubbed my hands over them, thinking I was imagining things. There, in my son's bed, was a young girl with curly blonde hair. She stared at me with wide eyes. She must have been terrified. I must have been a few feet taller and at least 100 pounds heavier than her. I must have been a sight to see for that little girl. But she should have considered that before breaking into my home. I called my wife and son to see what I found. Is that a human, Papa? Why, yes it is, baby bear. That's dinner. Posted by you/Holmes02. Negotiator. Son, can you hear me? The officer calmly said into the radio. He released the button on his CB radio handset and listened. Static filled the room as the other officers leaned in. Son, this is Officer McGinley. Can you hear me? No reply. The officers looked at each other, an unsaid message transmitted between them. A knock on the door and McGinley shouted for them to come in. He's here, said a fresh-faced recruit to McGinley. Send him in, replied McGinley. A few moments later a plainclothed man entered. Have you been briefed? McGinley said sharply. Yes, but it was my day off and dash. We need you to talk him down and stop him from what he's about to do, McGinley interrupted. The man nodded and looked around at the officers in the room. They stared back at him, anxious looks on their faces. McGinley held out the radio and waited for the man to take it. A moment of hesitation and the man stepped forward, grabbing the handset. He looked at it a moment and sighed before pushing the button to speak. Son, can you hear me? He released the button and waited. Silence. Even the static seemed to be gone. The man pressed the button again. I need to talk to the person in charge, the man said. That's me, a young voice replied almost immediately. The man dropped the handset and a loud electronic screech filled the room. The man quickly picked up the handset, covering one ear. I'm in charge, the young voice on the end of the radio said. Yes, we know that, the man said quickly, nearly stumbling over his words. What is it that you want? How can we end this? A moment of silence. Then a low sound. The sound grew louder. The young voice was laughing. The laughing stopped suddenly. What is it I want? Some fucking respect. The young voice said. Okay, we can dash, the man began. I want to show all my classmates what happens when they call me names, or break open the stall and take a photo of me taking a shit and passing it around the whole school. The man was silent now. Did you hear me? The young voice demanded. The unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked was heard over the radio. Yes, I heard you, let's work to jet dash. No. The time has passed for that. I reported it. Nothing happened. I went to my mom. Nothing happened. I understand your dash. I went to my dad, nothing happened. The young voices yelling echoed throughout the room. Well, Dad, are you listening now? Why, yes, son, I am. The man replied, quietly. Well, listen to this. The boy placed his handset down, leaving it on. Gunshots could be heard transmitted over the radio. The officers rushed out of the room while the father listened. Horror on his face as he heard the sound of bullets and screaming from inside the school. Posted by u/Alenia00. I am a monster. I am a monster. I have killed my mother, father, and sister. I don't even remember doing it. I had taken sleeping pills that night, and when I woke up, they were dead. My clothes and hands were covered in blood. The court had ruled me mentally unstable, so now I will remain in a private institution. It's a fancy word for a prison with other mentally unstable criminals. Whether it's for our own safety against sane criminals, or for theirs, I don't know. I suppose it doesn't matter, as well. It's strange. I can't remember ever having suddenly snapped into a different state of mind. In group therapy here, I sometimes hear people say they had signs beforehand, but I can't remember experiencing that. Or is that specifically caused by my mentally unstableness? I don't know anymore. Speaking of therapy, I'll be lead to personal therapy any moment, now. My therapist is an ex-girlfriend of mine, can you believe it? Back when I had broken up with her, she had been very manipulative. At least she's doing good now. She had tried contacting me very often, I always refused. A guard led me to the room. They had strict orders not to talk to any of the patients. As usual, I greeted him politely. He never spoke, but he seemed more relaxed near me than with other patients. I guess most people here aren't as polite, or calm. Or they were too drugged, and on the verge of collapsing any moment. When she saw me, she smiled. She seemed to enjoy my presence. After exchanging pleasantries, she asked me a familiar question. Do you remember anything new? As a matter of fact, I did. In the morning, something gnawed on my mind. The medication made it hard to think too much. She was tapping her foot against the table, making me glance at it subconsciously. Those shoes. That's it. I remember, when I gulped. When I found the bodies. I ran up to them, but my prints weren't the only ones. What do you mean? Evidence suggested they didn't die immediately. Were the prints their own? No, they weren't wearing shoes. Neither was I. It looked like sneaker prints, like yours. She narrowed her eyes. That confused me, she usually just nodded, almost smugly. She finished writing something down, and looked up. I think the stressful environment is impacting your mind. To calm your mind, I'm prescribing you more medicine. This is not negotiable. A little while later, a nurse came in. The dosage of pills was double the normal amount. The nurse smiled at me sympathetically. After I ingested the medicine, she left. My therapist cleared her throat. Now, repeat after me, and remember. I am a monster. I killed my mother, father, and sister. So I did.